Star Wars The Last Command. Finally made it to the last book of the Thrawn Trilogy. I've been wanting to read the Thrawn Trilogy now for a long time, just have not gotten around to it. But finally, I got around to ordering the 3 original printings of the book, so I got the actual good original covers for them. I love them. It looks awesome. And I also ended up getting the comics, as I've already said in my other reviews of the books. But great to have a comic adaptation alongside the books. But I did it with The Last Command as well, the last book here in the Thrawn Trilogy, the original Thrawn Trilogy for Star Wars. And I would say it is the only really good trilogy, at least with Thrawn, and I would say this is the definitive Thrawn. And it's pretty clear. It's literally the definitive character of Thrawn. It's where he originally appeared, of course. And since Disney brought him back in, of course, I've known of the character. I've seen the Rebels stuff that they did. And obviously the Rebels version is not nearly as cool as Thrawn is in these books. But the Rebels version is at least the presence of him feels better than say Ahsoka. The Ahsoka series, the latest version and appearance of Thrawn, the official appearance in live action, terrible. Absolutely terrible. This, though, great stuff. I really love this story. I think the last book here, Last Command, this is definitely my favorite of the 3. And Heir of the Empire is a really good, here we go. This is the next saga, the next story in the saga after Return of the Jedi. Here is all your new main characters. But this one right here, Dark Force Rising is good. It's a good, bridge between these two. But this one has, lots of Sabaoth, lots of Thrawn, lots of, Coruscant stuff, too, with Leia and stuff. And you kind of got everything mixing together. And you also got a lot of one of my newer, you could say new. It's not new anymore, but new to me in these stories is Talon Karrde. Talon Karrde is heavily focused in this book. He's got his own whole side story in this one, and I really like it. So Star Wars The Last Command, definitely my favorite book of this one, and I'm going to get into it here. Let's get into kind of what happened in this book and how I felt about it. So the book really does start out with Thrawn unveiling his new super weapon, which is not really a super weapon. It's actually just a deception by Thrawn, which is pretty creative. He actually ends up having ships go through planet shields, has them sitting and waiting that are cloaked, so they didn't see him go in or out, but there are ships of his underneath a planetary shield, and as he fires his laser from his Star Destroyer at the planet, then the ship that is cloaked shoots down towards the planet and causes chaos. He made the imagery of he's able to shoot straight through planetary shields. And that's how he starts it out. Here's Thrawn. He's coming in. This is the last book of the trilogy. Thrawn is at his full power right now of what he is in this story. And now he's unveiling his new weapon. And now the New Republic is shit. What are we going to do about this? So Thrawn does this little trickery, and it's not actually a super weapon, but doesn't matter. He just needs them to think that it is. But as the last book ended with Joruus Sabaoth, the clone of the Jedi Joruus Sabaoth. He is insane. He's absolutely insane. We've known this for a while now. Once he was cloned, he is just not as normal and stable as probably the normal Joruus Sabaoth Jedi was. So he's a clone, and he's just unstable. He's insane. He has these outbursts that go insane with crazy force powers and whatever. And Thrawn is very lucky to have his Ysalamiri around him. But Joruus Sabaoth and Thrawn are kind of having a power struggle, power feud between the two in the Empire, because Sabaoth suddenly wants to be in total control of the Empire. But obviously Thrawn has his ways. He's able to command the Empire. He still has the Empire under his command, and they all still serve him. And he's got control with the Ysalamiri, blocking the Force. So there's this big power struggle, and they're feuding quite a few times in this book. So Talon Karrde, which was my favorite new character. I always got to say that because I know he's been around now for a long time. It's not a new character, but it's new to me while reading these for the first time. Talon Karrde, my new favorite character in this trilogy, and he was in the second book from time to time. He still had his involvement, obviously knowing where the Katana fleet was and all that stuff, but he has a much bigger presence, I would say, in this last book, as well as the first book of Heir of the Empire. So he has a big presence in this book, and he is still kind of trying to maintain his neutrality within, being a smuggler, and he doesn't want to join the New Republic or the Empire. He just kind of wants to do his thing, just as all these other smugglers do. And that was kind of, like a back and forth that Han Solo had with some smugglers and whatnot early in Heir to the Empire. So it's kind of the thing, they don't want to take sides, but it's clear that Talon Karrde is very much not fond of the Empire, and he does want to, do some damage to them and figure out what they're doing and maybe put a stop to them, because they are definitely going to be interfering in them in what they do. He feels that they are quite literally a big threat to the galaxy, and he feels that they actually do need to be stopped. But he does try to maintain his neutrality. But through this book, obviously, he has another big whole storyline of trying to recruit all these different smugglers and whatnot to go against the Empire. We'll get to that a little bit later. There's a whole big storyline there, woven in with all the Coruscant stuff and Luke with Sabayoth and all that. This is definitely my favorite of the three. So for Mara Jade, she was obviously there in the battle with the Katana Fleet battle at the end of Dark Force Rising, and she was injured. She ejected herself out in a big beam or whatever in the final battle there, with the Empire. She was injured badly, and she is now recovering actually in the Imperial Palace on Coruscant. And she's now kind of separated from Talon Karrde, and her and Talon Karrde are separated for actually quite most of the book, pretty much, because she is kind of stuck on Coruscant. There's a lot that happens on Coruscant in this one, but there's a lot that happens with her, a lot that happens with Leia. There's lots of battles and things that happen in Coruscant this time around. And another thing I didn't really realize, and it didn't come to my realization that the Imperial Palace in this story, it's not like the Jedi Temple. I still kind of envision it as the Jedi Temple, because that's kind of where Palpatine, I guess it's the canon one now, where his Imperial Palace is the Jedi Temple. He took it over after he took Order 66, but I suppose at this point there was no Jedi Temple. The prequels had not happened yet, so it's just another whole area, another whole building. But they're in the Imperial Palace in this, and I still kind of just envision the Jedi Temple. It just works for me. But the Imperial Palace is apparently something else. But for my own mind, I'm just going to envision it as the Jedi Temple that Palpatine took over. But she is there, and she also has history with this building because she worked for Palpatine. She knows little secrets and whatnot of what Palpatine was doing there, little secret passageways. She knows things that he was doing, and she has this helps out quite a bit into this book as well. Some of the different things that she knows. What these books do really well is it portrays Thrawn as incredibly intelligent, and it seems like he literally is not wrong ever, and he never makes mistakes, although he already has made multiple mistakes and he's failed in battles and had missteps. But they always do a good job of making him seem like he's always a step ahead. He's always got a different plan ahead, and he's going to figure it out. He is going to overcome this, and he's going to bring back the Empire. It's going to be reborn under his rule. And he just always seems one step ahead, even if he's not, especially at the end of the book. Obviously, he's not one step ahead with how it goes, how the story ends for him. But there's definitely one big thing he misses near the end there. But that is definitely something in these three books in total, but especially, in this last book where he feels like, okay, I'm wrapping it up here. I'm going to get rid of the New Republic once and for all. We're going to take power and charge again. It seems like he is just unstoppable. He's coming up with these crazy plans, and it just falls apart just out of nowhere at the end. And we will get to that. But Thrawn is fantastic in these stories, in this book. It is great, just as always with Thrawn. So one of the really early things of the story is the last book ended with revealing that Thrawn is using clones now. He's able to make clones, and obviously we know the clones that he's making are at Tantus, but they don't know that yet, and they got to find out where Thrawn's clones are and where he's making them so they can stop it. So Talon Karrde is even involved in this. He even wants to stop Thrawn from making his clones, and Luke is involved. He really wants to go and stop the clones. The New Republic is as well. They all want to find out where the hell Thrawn is keeping his clones and where he's making them so they can go stop it. That is where that's what they're trying to do. Mara Jade comes in handy a little later for that whole story, but at the beginning, they're trying to find out where it is. They have no idea where the hell he's making these clones and where. They have nothing right now. They're just trying to find little leads and see where clones are placed and maybe try to follow them. But that is definitely the heavy focus in the beginning of the story, and it's interesting. Again, as I say, I'm going into these stories with the knowledge already with the prequels and so many other Star Wars stories since then that have happened. I didn't read these when they came out. I wasn't even born when these books came out. So obviously I did not read them when the prequels were not even out yet. So I'm reading this now with the knowledge of like Camino and the cloning facilities and everything and how everything worked. But now we're like getting this early cloning story that was done even before the prequels came out. Now obviously the Clone Wars were an implanted story already well in the first Star Wars movie ever. So it's an already established storyline that happened with Anakin Skywalker turning to the dark side. He's a great Jedi Knight. But this is even before the prequels. So again, whenever I see and hear Coruscant in these stories and in the comic bit that I read alongside it, it's cool to see it because this is one of the first like sightings and seeing of Coruscant in a story. And it's just kind of cool to see that. I like that. I think it's cool to see where the early versions of some of this stuff happened. And you got the cloning cylinders and stuff that Thrawn had, and you like to compare it and similarities with like things you kind of saw with Camino and the clones and the Clone Wars with Jango Fett and stuff. One major part of the Thrawn trilogy that finally ends up happening is that Leia has her twins, Jaina Solo and Jacen Solo. So they are both born in this last book of the trilogy. I do know that they're going to end up having a big stories, multiple stories going forwards. I don't know what they are, but I do know I always see people talk about those characters. They're going to have stories, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting to those stories because I just feel like I'm going to probably enjoy them more than what they did with Kylo Ren. There was kind of a disappointing story there for the sequels. That's why I just read these and it feels like a proper continuation, man. It just does. It really, really does. I feel like these characters, all of them interacting, they're dealing with like this remnant of the Empire. It's not like the Empire's just suddenly back. It's like this is like a remainder, little bits and remainder. They're not like totally back in power to what they were. And it's just this one guy, super genius guy, trying to bring it back to life. You got Sabayoth out there trying to get her and her twins, and it's expanding the stories with the Jedi and the Force. And I just think it's a better. Now, I don't know how good stories going forwards from here. I don't know if there's probably got to be some bad ones, some good ones within the Legends or EU stuff. I'm sure not every story is amazing, for sure. But I think it's, at least right at this point, with this trilogy, it's definitely a much better continuation for these characters than what we got in the sequels. Because they're all split up. I mean, obviously they're all older in the sequels, but they're all split up. You got this one son that Han and Leia had that like went off and formed the Empire again. And it's just another Empire that's just back in power after Luke just defeated them in the last movie. It's all just so strange. Han Solo's just a loser now out there, separated from Leia. Luke's a loser out there. I just love seeing these characters more around the time. I can envision them, what they looked like from the movies. They're much younger. So Senator Bel Iblis from the second book, or Iblis, I don't know how to say his last name exactly. He was a new character thrown into Dark Force Rising. Han and Lando ended up finding him and discovered that he had, past history with the rebellion, and he's finally trying to weave his way back into the rebellion now, and it seems like he is now like fully in the New Republic, but it's not like 100% like, set and settled with Mon Mothma yet, but he's kind of basically there, and he's like helping the New Republic now. He's commanding battles and whatnot. He's defending systems and stuff, and he's out there doing battles and commanding battles. So it's cool to see that. Big character in this book too. He's a big presence, especially with the Coruscant stuff once he makes it back to Coruscant with Leia and all that stuff. Big story there with him a little later, but there's a lot that happens on Coruscant in this book for sure. So again, he is a big character in this book along with Talon Card. And as I mentioned, Talon Card. I already brought it up. He's trying to get all these smugglers back together against the Empire. They're all very hesitant. They don't want to ruin their potential paycheck that the Empire could, have them do pretty good job and get paid well from the Empire to go get some stuff for them and whatnot. But Talon Karrde is on a mission to convince all these high-level smuggler people that he knows that the Empire is not going to be good for them and for business going into the future. And there's lots of bumps in the road. There's like this Imperial interaction that happens at one of their meetings where the Imperials attack them, and then they're all against the Empire. So that's kind of his big mission in this book, is to get them all on the same page to fight against the Empire, because really he just sees the Empire as the biggest threat as of right now. And even him trying to keep his neutrality, he can't do it. He can't do it. He doesn't want to join the New Republic, but he also he wants to rid the galaxy of the Empire. So in this book, we do get to see Luke actually interact with the Noghri instead of Leia for once, because Leia is always the one kind of doing all the stuff with the Noghri, and she was on their home world for a major chunk of the story last book. But he actually makes a trip to Onager, I don't know how to say the planet's name, their planet that the Empire basically completely destroyed. And he makes his way there after he escapes from another Imperial attack from Thrawn. He manages to get away from them again, but he's got to stop in and kind of get some repairs and stuff. So he actually makes his way down to the planet of the Noghri, and he kind of talks to them, and they're all like servant for him, and Leia has already proven that the Empire has messed them up, and they're only waiting to fully be against the Empire now. They're kind of like secretly doing it right now, where they're kind of like in this secret little area trying to rebuild the planet, even though it's kind of pointless. The planet's kind of dead, but they're trying to rebuild, and now they are against the Empire, but they're kind of waiting to strike in public and in the open. They're trying to be secret about it right now. It's not really known to Thrawn yet that the Noghri have totally flipped against the Empire, and that is something that we get to see happen. There's a big plot point right at the end there with the whole Noghri thing for sure. The Noghri were, again, definitely a much bigger part of the trilogy than I thought. Now I know how Thrawn ended. Even before I read these books, I had already heard who took him out and what happened to Thrawn. I knew the Noghri were there. I just didn't realize how much of a big impact they would have on this trilogy. And I think it's actually kind of cool, because it makes a lot more sense now on why that ends up happening to Thrawn at the end. So something that still hasn't gone away is Mara Jade and her confliction with the Emperor trying to continuously tell her to kill Luke Skywalker in her mind. She's hearing his voice over and over, and this has been something throughout all three books here, is she needs to kill Luke Skywalker. This is what he told her. And we obviously can see the turn in her as well, where she just won't kill Luke. She always tells herself that, I need Luke for this, I need Luke for that, I need him to help me do this one thing, that's why I can't kill him yet. But ultimately she doesn't want to kill Luke anymore. But there's also this confliction of the Emperor's voice is in my head constantly. This is my former master. I served him proudly, and he's telling me still, even after his death, that I need to kill this guy, and it won't go away. Even when it's pretty clear now that she very much doesn't want to. She just doesn't want to totally admit it. And she even ends up telling Leia, she tells her pretty much everything. I served the Emperor. I want to kill your brother. I want to kill Luke Skywalker. And Leia's pretty calm about it. She keeps pretty calm about it. Obviously, it alerts her, but she's pretty calm about it, and she tries to talk to her about it. You get some interactions like that. So, again, another big book to have, Leia and Mara Jade actually interacting, because Mara Jade hasn't really had story with Leia as of yet. Leia's kind of been off on her own doing the Noghri stuff, and she was hiding in, the first book. So Mara Jade and Leia kind of get some cool storyline here on Coruscant and some interaction there, so it's cool to see, especially with Mara Jade's strong desire, which is slowly fading, to kill Luke Skywalker. So throughout the book so far, Thrawn has sent multiple groups of Noghri out there to try and capture Leia and her twins, and it has failed over and over again. He cannot capture Leia. He has failed multiple times. So Sabaoth, in his desire to take power of the Empire, he's like, well, you know what, Thrawn? I'll give you one more chance. I'll give you one more chance to get my Jedi for me, and Thrawn has a plan. He is going to actually send a group of just like bandits, and he's going to send this mercenary group in there to go and capture Leia instead of sending a group of Nogri. And I don't think we really got much perspective of Rook's thoughts. He's kind of very, very silent in that, whenever you got scenes with Thrawn and Pelion on the bridge and stuff, you always kind of like forget that Rook is like in the room with them. He's always there somewhere like in the back as Thrawn's guard, and we don't really get to see much of what he's really thinking. And it's all pretty clear at the end of what he was thinking and how it works out with him and the Nogri and the other Nogri. But he's always there, and there's always little hints to like, oh well, Pelion does not like Rook at all, and he's always cautious of him. And there's always like little side glances, especially like when this happens. The Nogri are failing and they're not doing their job, so he's sending out these guys instead to go get Leia on Coruscant. So he's going to have these guys infiltrate Coruscant to try and go and get Leia. They do end up infiltrating. They almost get Leia, actually. They did a pretty damn good job, but they did not anticipate Mara Jade knowing a little secret passageways on the Imperial Palace. So Mara Jade actually ends up helping out and stopping the Imperial attack. And, there's another thing happening real soon from Thrawn, but this secret invasion to go get Leia, she ends up stopping it with the Force. And, so for the moment, Mara Jade is like a hero to the New Republic. She saved Leia. Awesome. Cool. Great. But then the like backup plan here gets set in place after they fail to capture Leia. And Mara Jade there's only one survivor of this infiltrating group that Thrawn sent in. He's like the leader of the group, and he plants that Mara Jade is actually the one who got them inside the palace. So he tries to lie his way to... He basically gets Mara Jade on the bad side of the New Republic. He says that Mara Jade actually helped the Empire to bring them in here to get Leia, even though she just helped save Leia. And I guess it's not enough, and they actually place Mara Jade under arrest. Her being arrested doesn't last long, because eventually she ends up telling Leia, because Leia, Han, Lando, all them, they don't really believe that Mara is like an Imperial agent at this point. Because she saved Leia. They all believe that she's fine, but the New Republic isn't totally convinced. Luke ends up breaking Mara Jade out once Mara tells Leia that she knows exactly where the cloning facility is, and she will be able to find it for them because she had seen it before, because she worked for the Empire. So she knows where Thrawn is doing his cloning, and she wants to take him there. So Luke goes and breaks her out. They get out of there. They kind of secretly do it. They disable the droid that was guarding the room. They come up with a plan to send Luke, Mara, Lando, Han Solo, C-3PO, R2-D2, all in one big group. They're all going to go to Wayland, which is the planet that the Tantus Mountain is on. So that's where Mara Jade knows. She knows where it is, but they got to get there first, and they got to figure out how to break in and destroy it. That's their whole big plan. And because of this, there was initially a plan for Sabaoth to actually stick around with Thrawn and invade Coruscant with Thrawn, because Thrawn has a plan on some sort of attack on Coruscant. Sabaoth wanted to be there, but then he suddenly ends up changing his mind. And it's pretty evident that he suspects that his Jedi will be appearing on Wayland, and he needs to be there immediately. So he talks to Pelion. He orders him to go to Wayland, and Thrawn is just kind of like casually agreeing to the Sabaoth at this point. Like, yeah, go ahead. Do whatever you want, He's not agitating him. He's trying not to agitate Sabaoth because he knows that this man is insane. And arguing with him and constantly arguing with him is going to be kind of pointless, because the man is literally insane. So he just lets him go. He lets him go to Wayland because of whatever reasons that he thinks. And he goes off to go to Wayland. So he sets a general to go with him. And so Sabaoth is going to go to Wayland with some Imperial forces. So Thrawn, on probably his grandest plan and coolest thing I think I've seen him do in his attacks on the New Republic, he comes up with this idea that he's going to collect some asteroids from a different system. I think it was like near his like shipyards and stuff where he's like building ships. He brings in some asteroids from a different area on his Star Destroyer. He brings them in on the Star Destroyer. He comes to Coruscant, and he launches tons of different asteroids into the orbit of Coruscant while they are cloaked. So he's using his new cloaking devices and technology that he's got. He's using that on his asteroids, and he's placing them all around Coruscant. So the people on Coruscant cannot detect where they are. They have no idea where the hell these asteroids are. And he also imitates like hundreds and hundreds of firings at the same time. So now, the New Republic thinks, oh shit, there could be like hundreds of asteroids, while he only launched like 22 or 23 of them. So he's got them in a panic. And he kind of makes it to the point where no one can enter Coruscant and no one can leave Coruscant. He's trying to get Coruscant out of the battle. He's trying to get them out of the war so he can go and do his things, keep Coruscant from being involved in any way. He doesn't want them involved. It's their center point, of course, for the New Republic, and he's trying to keep them out of the war. Also in this book, the character of Niles Ferrier from Dark Force Rising, first introduced in Dark Force Rising, so he's in 2 of the 3 of the books. He is back, and he is just as slimy and scummy as he was in the second book. Now, in this book, he's kind of trying initially to play off like, oh, I'm not really working with the Empire anymore. That job is done. I'm going to kind of get all good with these smugglers and join the crew against the Empire. So as Talon Card is having his little meetings with, the other smugglers to maybe try and convince them to go against the Empire, as I said, Niles Ferrier's like, I'll join in too. I heard the invitation. I'll join in on your meetings. And it ends up being revealed that Niles Ferrier is actually trying to get in good with Thrawn. An Imperial attack that ends up attacking the smugglers, which gets the smugglers to, hate the Empire, is actually set by Niles Ferrier here. He paid off an Imperial outpost of people, and he paid them off, and they attacked the smugglers, and they all ended up getting killed, and Thrawn was pissed. So that ends up having Niles Ferrier to basically be in control by Thrawn. Like, Thrawn totally has this guy now. He is totally in control of Niles Ferrier. He is indebted to him now because he pissed him off. He killed some Imperials, and now Thrawn wants him to do some shit for him. So Thrawn ends up having him go back and infiltrate these smugglers who are now mad at the Empire, and he wants them to frame Talon Card of the one actually placing the Imperials to attack them. So in his attempt to frame Card as the guy who planted the Imperial attack, initially it looks like they're all about to start turning on Talon Card. The evidence was planted in Talon Card's ship. The evidence was planted. They almost started interrogating him like, oh, did you set this attack so we would hate the Empire? But then Niles Ferrier, he fucks it up a little bit too much. They find out he was the one who planted the evidence, and he had his shadow creature go into his ship and do it. Niles Ferrier tries to escape. He tries to escape, and they end up blowing him out of the sky. So Niles Ferrier dies in this book, but man, you know what? As annoying as it is to see him and just read every single chapter with him in it, it is infuriating, but it is damn good. He is the perfect, shitty, scummy character you could ever meet, and it is done really, really well. You hate the guy so much, but it works really well, and it's just kind of like the antagonist for Card in this book, until he ends up reuniting with our main heroes and kind of fighting near the end there with Sabaoth on Tantus and stuff. That was kind of his whole side story, and it kind of gets wrapped up there with Niles Ferrier ending up in pieces there at the end of his run. So obviously, as I have mentioned, we have a big group of our heroes now heading towards Mount Tantus. They make their way there after several days, and then once they get there, they actually travel for several days on foot through the jungles on Wayland there towards Mount Tantus because they don't want to be spotted. So they landed the Millennium Falcon quite a ways away, but they knew where it was. They had their plan, and they started their travels. So they have a good portion of the story there. They're traveling towards Tantus, and then they got to find a way in. So that is kind of where they're going right now. But Leia is actually still at Coruscant. She's one of the only main heroes here that did stay on Coruscant. She still has the twins there, so she stayed behind with Winter, who's still there watching the kids as well. And there's some story there to tell for Leia, and it's probably one of my more interesting stories of the book for me is the whole Delta Source thing. So Delta Source has been the Imperial leak within the New Republic throughout this trilogy, and they spent a good chapter or two specifically trying to finally nail down who is Delta Source, and they're trying to figure out, is it a droid? Is it some sort of Imperial spy that's actually among them still? What the hell is Delta Source? Is it some like crazy high-tech listening device placed somewhere? And it's almost that. So as we go through this whole chapter of them trying to figure it out, Winter, Bel Iblis, Leia, all them, you got Cards guy there as well helping them out. They're trying to figure out what the hell and who the hell is Delta Source. Well, as we get through it all, and we're all out of luck, and they can't figure it out. They're almost about to give up. Leia realizes that they have like rows of trees in the Imperial Palace, and the rows of trees are very special. They have like droids that tend to them, and when you tap the tree, it kind of changes color. It like flaps its colors around, so it's got like really weird stuff going on with it. And when you tap the trees and stuff, you got like things of like red. At least in the comic, there it showed that like red flutters around on the tree trunks, and they end up discovering that whenever people talk within the Imperial Palace, whenever people are speaking, the trees actually take that, the sound, and they actually flutter. So it's almost like if you touch it, or there's loud sound, or there's noise, the trees kind of flutter and dance in a way, And she ends up realizing that there are Imperial devices planted within the roots of these trees to translate the fluttering of the trees and their the trunks and stuff. They're literally translating the movements of the tree into words, because there's people walking all around in the Imperial Palace all the time, and they're talking, right? So it translates all the little movements, and it translates that into information for Thrawn. And that is something that the Emperor ended up placing in there a while back. So that's how he ended up knowing things, about senators and whatnot. They made a statement about that. So that is something that the Emperor himself actually put in there, and Leia figured it out. There was obviously, she had help from a few other people as well, but ultimately at the end, she was the one that sat there and realized it, like, holy shit, this is an incredibly like advanced Delta Source leak thing in Thrawn. He was using it, but eventually he does lose it. So they take him out, they deal with the trees, and Delta Source is discovered. And I thought that was like one of the more interesting stories, and I know there's a lot going on with everything, but I just thought, like, I didn't expect that Delta Source, trying to figure out who it was or what it was, would be one of the more interesting things to me. But it's like, damn, it was the trees. The trees were the leak. Like, that's kind of cool. I thought that was kind of really creative. So as the New Republic is trying to figure out where all these asteroids are, and they're going through them slowly and trying to destroy the asteroids so they can clear the planet and they can actually go in and out of the planet again, they come up with the plan that they're going to go get this like special device. I don't remember what it's called, but they're going to go get this special device. It's only available to take in Imperial sectors of the galaxy. So they have this plan to infiltrate the Imperial shipyards, and they have a mock place that they're gonna make it look like they're gonna attack that place, and then they're gonna actually go and attack the Imperial shipyards and go get this device so that they can find and locate the asteroids to clear them. So that's their whole plan. This is like the setup for the big battle here at the end, even though there's not really that much. It doesn't happen all that long in the book, the whole big battle. The bigger battle is with Sabaoth actually at the end, but this is probably one of the smaller like battles in the trilogy here, but it doesn't happen too long. But this is something that's getting set up, that this is what the plan is. They're going to go and try and get a device, and Talon Card's people are also kind of like finding this information out. They're going to go try and steal this device to sell it to the New Republic. So it's almost like a race kind of to see who gets to it first, but they don't really know that each other are going after it. So basically everyone's after this device right now to get it from the Empire so they can clear the asteroids and get back in the war. Meanwhile, Sabaoth is heading back towards Wayland now, and he's back on Wayland on Tantus, and he is getting he's turning into a very dark storyline here. So while he was sent to Wayland, we know with Thrawn's acceptance, Thrawn's like, okay, you can go. He also sends General Covell and a bunch of Imperials to go with him. Now, Covell, not a big character or anything, but he's like the general that was sent with him. And we get this really weird chapter in the book where he's like, in General Covell's mind, and he's like totally trying to warp his mind and control him. It actually I had to read it like a second time, and I still didn't totally like understand what the hell was happening. It's like the only chapter that I had to reread a few times just to like know, or at least section, to know what was kind of going on. But it was a really weird, freaky thing. Like, Sabaoth was like in this guy's mind trying to completely alter it and change it. He is literally getting into people's brains, in their minds, with the Force, and trying to completely change them and twist them into their own ways. He's trying to control people in a different way than Palpatine ever did. So it's a much more twisted and dark, evil way than Palpatine ever did. Now, I mean, obviously, Palpatine was an evil guy, pretty bad guy, but this is like a much darker, Force-based, twisted type of villain that we got here with Sabaoth. And General Covell ends up dying because he gets disconnected with the Ysalamiri once they get to Wayland. So that's kind of what gets Thrawn on his trail. And once Thrawn finds out, he actually places Sabaoth under arrest on Wayland because he has a bunch of Ysalamiri on Wayland, on Tantus. So he actually ends up arresting Sabaoth and placing him under arrest in the Emperor's throne room on Tantus. So he's kind of stuck there for the moment. So he's there, under arrest by Thrawn, while Luke and all of them are headed right to them. So I'm like, okay, how's this battle going to go down? Because I know there's going to be a battle, but there's no Force. You know, the whole Tantus doesn't have any Force now. So how is that going to happen? They do end up getting into that. We will get to it. He's definitely got a plan. Sabaoth is an interesting character, and he does kind of outsmart Thrawn in a few things. But yeah, man, Sabaoth is getting real dark in this one, and he is determined to create a new galaxy of Jedi in his own image, and he is determined to get into some twisted ways to do that. We do get a moment where Mara Jade ends up finding out that Luke is Vader's son. It's another realization that maybe the Emperor was trying to tell her to kill Luke because he was simply trying to get back at Vader. I think that was kind of the interpretation there. So it was almost like another like twist against her idea of who the Emperor was. And it's just a knack in the whole thing of like, does she really want to serve the Emperor anymore? Or is this just going to finally like, I can't do this anymore? The Emperor, he's telling me, you know, I keep hearing his voice, but like, is this really what I should be doing? Or should I be going my own way finally? So she does end up finding out that Luke is actually Vader's son from one of the Nogri that are there on Wayland protecting them. So one of the other crazier things in this book is how Leia ends up discovering another thing. She ends up discovering that Thrawn is actually creating his clones way faster than they ever thought he should be making them, but he's making them very, very quickly. And they're wondering how. Well, they realize that the Force interferes with the way that a clone would work. You know, if you're cloning someone over and over again here, that it's the same like being kind of, the Force interrupts with that because it's like a cloning of the same type of being. You know, it's a duplicate. So the Force interrupts with that and makes them insane and stuff. Well, she's realizing that, like, if you add the Ysalamiri, which block the Force, around all these cloning tanks, it cuts the Force off. There's no Force there. So they're able to make clones faster than ever. And that's the way he's doing it. So she realizes, holy shit, I need to get to Tantus now. I need to go warn them that there is some bad shit about to go down. And she sets a plan to go to Tantus, and she needs Talon Karrde's help. So Talon Karrde does arrive because he wants to see Mara Jade. Mara Jade is not there, obviously, because she is with Luke. So he gets down to the planet, and he tells them that they got all the asteroids because he saw them at the shipyards. So he makes his way down to the planet through the barrier. And Leia actually gets the aid of Fela, Borsk Fela, who was kind of the antagonist for the whole political side of the last few books against Admiral Akbar and stuff. He wasn't in this book all that much, but he's very adamant about getting rid of Thrawn's cloning stuff on Wayland and his whole, basically the whole, storehouse there on Tantus. He's very, very much for going there and destroying it all. He doesn't like some of the rumors of the stuff that's in there. So Fela actually, or Felia, however you say his name, he's quite an asshole in especially the last book, but this one, he's actually trying to help a little bit, even if it's only for his own good. He's still helping them right now, and he ends up getting Karrde. He ends up paying Talon Karrde, to go help Leia, and go to Wayland to go help Luke. So now we got Leia with Talon Card, got some Nogri, I believe, with her, and they're going to go and try to help Luke while they're heading right into the trap of all the clones and Sabaoth, and it's going to be a big, crazy climactic battle at the end. So while our big main group finally makes their way towards Mount Tantus and they break their way in, they head towards the main center throne room because they need to find a way to blow up the whole place, and Mara Jade believes that there might be like some big self-destruct button because she believes that Palpatine may not even have wanted people to get all of his stuff there. So maybe he set a self-destruct thing in his throne room. So they try to go to the throne room, figure out like, maybe Palpatine did something. And this is where the confrontation begins. But right now they don't have the Force, so it's kind of like a talking match right now between Joruus Sabaoth is there under arrest by Thrawn, so he's kind of stuck in that room. And Mara Jade and Luke arrive. And Sabaoth ends up revealing his grand plan. Now they've been slowly, quietly teasing this thing, and I actually knew about this a little bit too. So, unfortunately, I didn't get to go into the whole story fresh. I knew some of the little details. I knew that there was going to be a Luke clone. I've heard about the Luke clone before. This is Luke with 2 U's in the name. That's how they kind of do the clone names. Sabaoth ended up having Pelion make a clone of Luke from his hand that he lost on Bespin against Vader. So this clone of Luke ends up having the lightsaber that he lost. So this is actually like Anakin's lightsaber now. So this is where it ends up in this storyline of Legends stuff right now. This is where the lightsaber ends up, not on some random chest on, whatever lady in The Force Awakens. No, it's actually here, right there. And it's in this Luke clone thing that Sabaoth is now commanding. I think that's a lot cooler. Don't you think? I think that's a lot cooler. So he's walking out looking just like Luke under the control of Sabaoth, and he's using his father's lightsaber. Isn't that crazy? So there's a whole big fight ensuing, and Sabaoth actually ends up bringing the Force back because he actually controlled a sect of Thrawn's Imperials to actually set explosives by every single Ysalamari in Tantus. And at a moment, he initiates the explosion, and they all die. So all the Ysalamari die, and the Force returns. That ensues the big Force battle here at the end with Sabaoth. There's a lot I can get into with the whole battle, but generally it's a big, crazy battle. Luke fights with the clone for most of the battle, while Mara Jade is kind of struggling because she gets zapped. She got real zapped by Sabaoth in the beginning of it. Leia and Han Solo, Lando, Talon Card, they all kind of arrive at the same place. Lando and Chewie, they set the place to blow up. So even if they can't manage to figure something out here, the place will end up blowing up either way. So eventually they need to get out of there. But the place is set to now blow. And there's a big battle ensuing. So Mara Jade, she's had this struggle in her mind that the whole time that she needs to kill Luke Skywalker. Well, there is a Luke Skywalker right in the room with them right there. So as Luke is fighting this evil, I don't want to say evil, it's kind of like a mindless clone that's just kind of being controlled by Sabaoth. While he's fighting it, Mara Jade, she grabs Leia's lightsaber, which she ended up dropping because Leia was there. She gets Leia's lightsaber with the Force, and she charges the clone, and the clone is stabbed and killed by Mara Jade. So that clears her mind. She's now killed Luke Skywalker. Now, Luke Skywalker, of course, is still there, but it was enough for her to kill the Luke clone, and that is how she kills Luke Skywalker and gets the Emperor's voice finally out of her mind. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that they managed to make it that way, because obviously they're not going to kill Luke, at least at this point. Mara Jade is actually pretty significant in this final battle, and it works. So after she kills the clone, she actually does end up killing Joruus Sabaoth as well. So Sabaoth is literally losing his mind. He's like crumbling the mountain around them. He's got rocks falling all over Luke and Mara Jade and everyone else in the room with Han, Lando, Talon Card, Leia, all of them are in the room. They're kind of injured by Sabaoth. Mara Jade lands the final blow as well against Sabaoth, and then he explodes into this big dark side explosion that like literally blasts a massive hole into the top of the mountain, and that is their way out. So that's how they get out. So Sabaoth dies, but that is not the end. There is another bit of the story that we need to get to. So as all that is going on Wayland, it would appear that Thrawn and Pellaeon are realizing that there are several groups that are now kind of advancing, and it looks like they may start to be losing this battle at the shipyards. And you got Card's group out there, you got the New Republic out there kind of teaming up, and now they're starting to try to get away and escape and fight off the Empire. And it's like, oh shit, are we losing this battle here, right? And then Pellaeon gets a message. He gets an alert from Wayland, and he starts to read off what was going on Wayland. And then he ends up reading eventually on, with Sabayoth and all that, what's happened to Sabayoth, his intruders and stuff. And then he ends up reading, or at least tries to read, that there were Nogri involved in the invasion on Tantus. But before he can even say it, Rook, the bodyguard to Grand Admiral Thrawn, turns. So this is basically where you get to see where Rook's real loyalties fall at the very end. He is loyal to his people and the Nogri people, and he attacks Pellaeon, and he hits his throat, and he kind of knocks the wind out of him or whatever, and Pellaeon falls to the floor. And it's not the only attack. Eventually we end up realizing that Thrawn has also been stabbed through his own chair, and then Rook runs off. And he says glory to the Nogri people. This is for the Nogri people and what the Empire did to the Nogri people. So that was Thrawn's one big oversight, is the Nogri people and what the Empire did to them. He really miscalculated on how much that would end up being a problem for him. And this is all mainly because of Leia and how she proved that. His carelessness with the understanding of the Nogri definitely ended up leading to his downfall. But his last little bit here, he's dying. Rook runs off after he says his stuff. He says, but it was so artistically done. And then he dies. So Thrawn dies. And it sucks because obviously he'd love to see so much more of Thrawn. But it's such a quick way though. It's so sudden. Because the battle is kind of almost started, really. At least in the book, we didn't see much of it. And then Pellaeon's like, shit. Thrawn would know what to do right now, in this battle. He would know how to get out of this. He would know how to deal with it. But I am not Thrawn. So he orders the retreat, and they leave the battle. So the Empire loses. And that's kind of just how it's set. They don't really show much more of the battle. It just ends there. The Grand Admiral has died by his own bodyguard, the Nogri Rook. He runs off, loyal to his Nogri people, and Grand Admiral Thrawn is dead. So he's done. He's gone. All dead now. So that's it for Thrawn. That is the one big thing I did know. I knew who killed Thrawn a long time ago now. Didn't affect my enjoyment of the actual story, though. I knew it was coming already, but I didn't actually know the exact reasoning as to why Rook did it. Because before I even started reading this trilogy, I didn't realize how big an impact and part that the Nogri people would play in this story. And I didn't know the exact reasons as to why he would do that to Thrawn. Now I do. I get it. Makes sense to me. So there is Grand Admiral Thrawn's end. The Empire's potential new reign of terror ends. And then we do get one final little scene. And that final little scene is with Mara Jade. She seems to be quite on the side of the New Republic now, but Luke has one little mission for her. And the mission that Luke has for her is he wants her to kind of negotiate between the smugglers like Card and whatnot with the New Republic. He wants them to work for the New Republic, kind of build that barrier between them so they kind of work together more, because she's already in with Card, and that's kind of what his little plan is for her. And then he hands her his lightsaber, his old lightsaber, because they got it from the Luke clone that they ended up killing. So now we have Luke Skywalker's old lightsaber, or Anakin's lightsaber, the original main lightsaber from the beginning of Star Wars itself. Mara Jade now has it. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was cool because he's got his own now from Return of the Jedi. I love his green lightsaber. So now they both got these iconic sabers with them. The story ends. Thrawn's gone. And I know there's other stories by Timothy Zahn. I'm going to end up reading those at some point here. I'm looking forward to it. But there's so much of the EU stuff right now that I'm going to try to get into now. But that is where The Last Command ends. And boy, I enjoyed that ending. I really loved the battle with Sabayoth, all the Force stuff, the cloning stuff, and how it was explained, how the clones were grown faster, and how the Force works within the clones, what Sabayoth's plans were with Mara Jade. He planned on maybe cloning her. so much crazy stuff. I think this book made Sabaoth a much more interesting villain than he kind of was in the first two. So he was cool. He was interesting for sure. This mysterious dark Jedi, which we would nowadays probably call like almost a Sith or, you know, a dark side user. These days they don't really put the term Jedi on these Darksiders, which I kind of agree with. I kind of makes sense that they don't put the term Jedi on these like super evil people. But at the time, the Dark Jedi term was what they were. So this evil Dark Jedi, you know, he's like a next level. He's not a Vader. He's not like a ruthless, like stone, like cold, just ruthless killer of Vader. He's not like the Emperor trying to take charge with, you know, Imperial forces and just kind of take charge of the galaxy in that type of way with, you know, brute force with the Empire and all of his Imperial military might. He's trying to do these really dark, twisted things, and I thought he was really cool there. And this kind of set the journey for Mara Jade as well. Mara Jade obviously has been a very well-known and liked Legends. I don't like to really say the Legends. I know that's a Disney label, but it is like the known term these days for the stuff that Disney got rid of. And it does suck because right now I really enjoyed these 3 books. I thought they were great. It just works better for me after the original trilogy, and I'll probably end up reading these again at some point here, you know, just to kind of get more familiar with them as I, you know, watch the movies over again. And just, I want this to kind of just be my sequels as it is for a lot of other people. I enjoyed it though. I thought Sabaoth was cool. I know there's like other books I think out there, like the Outbound Flight one. I think it explains like maybe what happens to the actual Jedi, Joruus Sabaoth. I know there's like another, it has Thrawn in it and stuff. There's lots of other stories, man. There is so much for me to get into. But The Last Command was definitely my favorite. Definitely my favorite of the 3. I really liked the first one though. Like, there's nothing wrong with Dark Force Rising either. I thought it was good. I did. I just thought it was, if you have to choose, it's always like if you have to choose the lowest of the 3, it's because it's kind of like, it's just like in between the 2 big events, really, of the beginning of it and then, you know, the conclusion of Sabaoth and Thrawn. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it, and it brought so many different aspects. That this is not the type of stuff that they really got much into with the original trilogy. It's like a next level type of stuff. You know, you had Vader, you had Palpatine, right? But it was more just like, you know, defeating the Empire and, you know, Luke finally discovering and becoming a Jedi. But this time it's like we're getting into the nitty gritty of like, what is the Force? What is the Jedi? You know, who are these evil dark side users? And it's crazy. It's crazy. So obviously there's other Force users out there now. I know there's a lot more story to go out there of Mara Jade and, you know, Leia's kids and stuff. I know there's so much out there, and I'm hopefully going to get into it. It took me a while to get this trilogy though, not because I didn't want to. I just never did it, and I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed it. And I do hope that one day Disney will just adapt these stories as a non-canon thing. They're already doing non-canon stuff like animations and stuff. Here's an idea that I don't think they'll ever do. Why don't you just make like an animated adaptation of the Thrawn Trilogy? Just make it animated. You know, do like a Clone Wars style animation of the Thrawn Trilogy. Like perfect adaptation. Not like your own way, your own version of it. Just do an adaptation of this and just see how it does. See how the reception is. It may not be watched by many because, you know, you've done a lot of damage to the brand. But maybe it would be. Maybe good word of mouth. And maybe it'd be a crazy, awesome, popular thing. I think it would. They'll never do it. They'll never do it. But I think they should start to do non-canon stories again. They should start to adapt maybe them EU stuff here, Legends stuff, and just do it. I think it would be so cool. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever see a live action of this type of stuff. They're going to try to do their own version of it now with Thrawn, but it's not really this. So I would love to just see an 3 animated movies of like the Heir to the Empire Thrawn Trilogy. You know how amazing that would be? Just slap your big Legends logo on it if you want to. Whatever. That's fine with me. You know, if you want to put your big Legends logo on it, fine. If you have to do that, fine. Make it clear that you don't want this in your new canon. But I want to see it. I want to see it done. And I think a lot of people would as well. I don't think they'll ever do it. But at least there's like this comic adaptation alongside with it. If you want to actually have like a visual of the trilogy as well. That was cool to also have alongside it. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm really interested in reading the next few books, especially by Timothy Zahn, with kind of basically continuing the story. I know there's like a few books on Pelion, and kind of like a few years later after this, continuing it. So I'll pick that up at some point, read it, maybe do some reviews on it. But this Thrawn Trilogy, good stuff. I know why people always talk about it. I love it. It's good stuff. I want this to become my sequels because it's really good.